and welcome to Chapter 6, Section 2. Here we're going to work a little more in depth in fractions, decimals, and percents, and converting one to the other. So, we're going to start with decimals to percents. When we change decimals into percents, it really is a matter of just moving the decimal. You always move the decimal twice. Now, if you're going to put a percent sign there, because you're changing from a decimal to a percent, you always go towards the percent sign. And when you're taking the percent sign away, because you're moving it into a decimal, the decimal goes away from where that percent sign used to be. So, what I usually tell my students is that percent sign is like a magnet. And if it appears, the decimal goes towards it. And if it disappears, then the decimal goes away from it. So hopefully that's going to help you remember. So, let's try a few. I've got here, we're going to start with 43 hundredths, 0.43. I'm going to take my decimal and I'm going to move it 2 times towards where that percent is going to be. So that's going to be 43%, and then I don't need that decimal there anymore. 675 thousandths, I'm going to move my decimal again 2 times, and that's going to be 76 5/10%. 3.5. What happens if I've got a whole number here? Well, if you've got a whole number, you've got more than one. Percent is usually parts of hundredths, which is 1 chopped into 100 little pieces. If you've got 3 5/10, you've got 3 whole ones. Now what happens if you have 1 whole one? Well, that's 100%. So this you would expect to be more than 100%. I'm going to take this number, and again, I'm going to move my decimal over 2 times, and I'm going to need a placeholder here. So this is going to end up being 350%. Now, does that make sense? Because that's a big number. But yeah, it does, because I have 3 whole numbers here, so that should be fine. I've got a 0.2, a 2/10 here. I'm going to move my decimal over 2 times, and again, I'm going to need that placeholder. This becomes 20%. What happens if I want to make fractions into percents? Well, here you have one of 2 options, because you need to change that fraction into a decimal. And then the decimal just slides on over to give you that percent. Sometimes it's easy to get to a decimal from a fraction, because sometimes your denominator very neatly goes into 10, 100, 1,000, or whatever. You want the denominator that works like this, because these are decimals. So if I have 4/10, if I have 4/10, I have 4/10. These are the same thing. They're even read the same way. They're read the same way because they're the same thing. So, changing your fractions to decimals are really easy once you get it to this point. The trick is finding a common denominator. Sometimes that works easily. Here I've got 3/5. 3/5 I can make equal something over 10 very easily. Times 2, and I end up with 6/10. 6/10 equals 6/10. And then I do 1, 2, and I've got 60%. Let's do, we're going to skip this one for a second. We're going to do another easy one. 1/2. Halves, 2s, I can make easily into 10s. I can make this easily work into something over 10. Times 5, and I've got 5/10. 5/10 is the same as 5/10, and I move the decimal over, and I have 50%. What about fourths? 4 doesn't go into 10, but 4 goes into 100. Think about quarters. So, if I want this to go over 100, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 25. Because remember, I'm thinking about quarters. 4 quarters is 100. 3 quarters is 75. So this is 75 over 100, which is 0.75, which is 75%. These are all the same thing. Now, 8s can get a little tricky, because 8 doesn't go into 10, and 8 doesn't go into 100, but 8 goes into 1,000. So you've got a choice here. You can remember that 8 times 125 is 1,000, just for ease of getting through this chapter. Or you can do the long division, because that's the next step. If I have a number, let's use this as an example, 7. 7 doesn't go into anything. 7 is one of those irritating numbers that always cause you problems. If you have a 7 as a denominator, you are not going to be able to do this the easy way. So you've got to go to the second option, which is to do the long division. Divide the top by the bottom. So if I've got 6 7s, this is actually 6 divided by 7. Top number is the winner. He goes in the house, and I'm really quickly going to figure out what 6 divided by 7 is. I'm going to put my decimal up there. 7 goes into 60 8 times. 56, 40. 7 goes into 40. 6 5 times. That's 35. 7 goes into 50. 7 times. That's 49. Okay, so I got 0.857. It's already, I just made it a decimal. 0.857. That becomes 85.7%. Now, you can do that with 8s too, or you can multiply the top and the bottom by 125. 125 times 5, 10, 12, 5, 6. That is times 125 times 125, and you get 625 over 1,000, which is 0.625, which is 62.5%. Now, there's 2 more I want you to remember. 1/3 and 2/3. 1/3 is 33 1/3%. You're gonna, if you do that long division, it's gonna keep going 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and it's never gonna stop. Okay? Now, you can do this if you want, or you can take my word for it and just remember that one. 2/3 is 66.7%. Why 7? Because it's 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, and so you always look next door to see if it rounds up or stays the same, and 6 makes a 6 round up. So 1/3, can we just jump straight to the fact that it's 33 1/3%, or it's 33.3%? Doesn't matter which way you write it. Sometimes you need fractions, sometimes you need decimals. And then 2/3 is 66.7%. Just remember those. It will make your life easier. But you can see this isn't hard. There's just a couple of steps to it, and you just need to practice it a little to keep track, okay? So here we have your turn. Your turn means that you're going to write the fraction as a percent. I've got 1/4, 3/25, 11/20, and 7/40. And then you're going to write the decimal as a percent. You've got 7/10, 32/100, 4 6/10, 35 278 thousandths, and 1. Which isn't hard, but you need to remember it. So go ahead and give these a try, and then come on back, and we'll do them together. All right. So 1/4 times 25 times 25. This is 25 over 100, which is 25%, because it's 0.25. 3/25 times 4 is 12 over 100, which is 0.12, so that's 12%. 20 times 5 is 100, so 11 times 5 is 55 over 100, which is 0.55, which is 55%. 40 does not go into 100, but 40 goes into 1,000. 25 times. Times 25 times 25. I don't know what 7 times 25 is. 30, 14, 15, 16, 17. 175 over 1,000, which is 0.175. So this is 17.5%. Then we did these, and these are a lot easier. We're going to go 1, 2. So this is 70%. 1, 2. This is 32%. 1, 2. This is 460%. 1, 2. This is 3,527.8%. And 1 is 100%. Why? Because I took my imaginary decimal and I went over 2. I could have a 5 and there's no decimal. I've got an imaginary one right there. I move it over 2 times. I have 2 placeholders and that becomes 500%. So don't let the lack of a decimal fool you. Okay? What happens if they stick all of these numbers together and say, put them in order? Fractions, decimals, and percents. And you go, ugh. And then you realize if I can get everything into decimal form, then I can compare them really easily. So, the trick is figuring out their decimal form, and I want the same number of decimal places. I don't want to have to compare 4 with 3.2 with 0.78. I want my decimal places to all line up so it's really obvious. So I'm going to make this into a decimal. Well, I can say times 2 times 2, and this becomes 1 8/10, which is 1 8/10. This is already a decimal. This is 0.33, but this 2 decimal places. I'm going to make this 2 decimal places. So now it's 80 and it's 33, and I like that. Negative 1 6/10, I want that to be 2 decimal places. Negative 1.60. 3 becomes 3.00. 2 1/5 times 2 times 2. That's 2 2/10. 2/10. So that's 2.2. 2 2/10, but I'm going to make it that. And then I'm going to make this 0.70. Now they all have 2 decimal places after the whole number, if they've got a whole number. Now I can compare them. Now I can look and say, well, there's my smallest number. Why? Because it's got a negative sign. Negative signs are always the smallest one. The bigger the number, the more negative it is. So there's my first number. What's my second number? Well, I'm going to compare everything that starts with a 0. 0. So this is 70 versus 33, repeat. So this is going to be the smallest, and then there's this one. This is smaller than this one. Now, anything that starts with a 1, this starts with a 1, that's going to be the next one. This one starts with a 2. This one starts with a 3. Got me? Your turn. Give it a try. Now these don't have all the whole numbers with it. You have to get a little bit more finesse in your work. So give it a try and push pause, and I will see you in a few minutes. All right. So how do we make these all into decimals? I've got a decimal, a percent, and a fraction. First thing I'm going to do is change this fraction. I'm going to go times 2 times 2, and this equals 6 over 10. So now I've got 0.6 bar, dink, dink, 0.06, and 0.6. Well, 1 decimal, 2 decimals, 1 decimal. I want all of these to have, so I'm going to add another, I can't add a 0 because this is a bar, so I'm going to add another 6 here. But here I have to add a 0. So now I'm comparing 66 bar with 6 with 60. So my 6 is going to come first, my 60 is going to come second, and my 66 bar is going to come third. How'd you do? Are you kind of getting the feel for this? If it's not coming clearly, I need you to go back and review the part that you're having trouble with, okay? Because we're practically done. That's it for comparing numbers, ordering numbers, and changing percents, fractions, and decimals. So let me know how you did tomorrow, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.